Welcome back to the Motor Show. Now, my next guest has a job that I believe most male Australians would love to do. It's Chris Jewell, who's a commentator for the V8 Supercars. How are you, Chris?
Yeah, pretty well, thanks. How you going, Aaron?
Good, mate. Every man, you have the job that I'm sure most males in Australia, most even females would love to have.
Yeah, I get paid well for it too, don't I? No, it's a great job. It's the best seat in the house. Somebody asked me last week what's the favourite part of the commentary, and I said, well, you've got a timing screen, you've got the television pictures, you've got your own eyes peering out through the windows of the commentary box, and you're normally in good company. So for a fan-turned-commentator, you couldn't get a better place to talk about motorsport and also observe it at the same time.
Now, we've spoken off air before. The job you do, as much as people would admire to do it, it's a hard job. I mean, for instance, last week, Bathurst, you were pretty much on the job for 7 hours.
Yeah, it is. You know, I tend to do a lot of research in the week leading up to it, and then I do a lot of research the day immediately following it. And obviously, you don't want to do your research too far in advance because a lot of the news isn't fresh, and at the same time, you're just always, you know, crawling through all of the newspapers and teams' reports to know that you're absolutely abreast of everything that's going on technically, functionally, and even anecdotally. Things like, you know, the Kelly brothers, you know, flying around in F-18 Hornets at Williamtown Air Base on their way to Bathurst, etc., is always good topical discussion that you can use as a filler to the normal race commentary, which fortunately for a race like Bathurst, there's plenty of time to talk about the on-track action, but there's also plenty of time to talk about some of the human interest angles as well.
So the Kelly brothers flew a jet to the Bathurst?
No, they actually flew Todd's Piper Citation, I think it is, but they went to the Williamtown Air Force Base in New South Wales as the truck took the cars up there, and they took two of Australia's Defence Force fighter pilots for a ride in the Jack Daniels Commodores up and down the runway there, and at the same time they were bolted into the seat of two of our FA-18 Hornet jets, fighter planes, for a ride as well. So I can't think of many other Australian sports people other than Greg Norman who did it in America that have actually been able to fly as a passenger in any of our fighter planes. So they were almost, you know, lost for words when they tried to describe what they'd been through. So, yeah, you think having a job in the commentary box gives you a few good spoils, but those boys are certainly enjoying plenty of the riches of their chosen vocation.
Wow, they are. Now, before I get on to Bathurst, which I'd love to talk to you about, how did you start in your career? How did it all start, Chris? How did you end up calling V8 Supercars?
That's probably a story you wouldn't even have time to hear. Because these things don't happen in a minute, but primarily it came on the back of being involved in motorsport since I was 7 in different capacities and working in a sports marketing capacity with the International Management Group in motorsport, which morphed into my own motorsport marketing and management business, managing a number of clients. And on one very cold Mallala, South Australia race day, I was told that you need to go up and commentate Formula Holden race because the other commentator hadn't turned up, and effectively that was my opportunity, and the rest is history.
Well, there you go. So making the best of an opportunity.
Yeah, well, sometimes you get them put in front of you and you've got to seize them, and at that point I hadn't ever considered being a commentator, but my dad did say to me once upon a time, you were born talking, so at least you're putting it to good use.
Okay, now talking about the summary of Bathurst, if you could tell, being there and being the caller, how it went and how you found it, and I suppose the result.
Yeah, look, you know, I think that race is, it goes through different phases over its 6 hour or so duration, and it probably wasn't the cliffhanging finish that we've seen on occasions previous, but it certainly wasn't a boring affair either, and it was great to see some new names running in and around the top, you know, 5 or 6, and with the Holdsworth-Bernard combination leading for so long in the Fujitsu GRM Commodore was always good, but look, the right team won at the end of the day. The best team with the best strategy and the best drivers won. But gee, if you really pull back the thin veneer and look a little bit more closely into that, if not for Will Davison's late race safety car, they were going to run out of fuel before they made it to the flag, and we would have had a very different winner. So it's the race that everybody wants to win. It's our Grand National. It's our Holy Grail. And at the end of the day, it's easy to say that, you know, Craig Leonard and Mark Skaife, the two biggest names in V8 Supercar, walked away with the Peter Brock Trophy. But gee, if not for that late race safety car, it could have been a very, very climatic and different finish.
Well, obviously the strategy they used and the fuel they were burning. I was listening to your call on the race, and it was a lot of. I remember seeing the way Skaife was looking at the footage as they were going around, and mathematically, you're right. I think you were saying off air that they were either going to run out just before the hill or on the way down the hill.
Yeah, well, 27 is a magic number to do a 6-stop strategy based on, you know, safety car intervention or not. And there were not a lot of safety cars deployed during the course of the race, and they effectively had to get to 26 laps on fuel. and they had not gone past 24 laps at any point during the course of the previous part of the race. So their form had shown that they were obviously going to finish on vapour, or at least on the reserve if they made it. And there are a couple of other teams that could go to 27 laps of fuel. In fact, some teams deployed a strategy where they're told their drivers to back off sufficiently so that they would have benefited from the last 2 laps of being able to get to the finish line while others around them ran out. Not just the Lowndes and Whincup combinations, but there were many others in the top 10 that were running the gauntlet there. So unfortunately, those people who chose to do that suffered as a result of the safety car, because it effectively brought into the final positions 6 or 7 runners in the top 12 that just wouldn't have made it. So, but that's good strategy. They probably figured a late race safety car was something that could potentially present itself. But I spoke with Will Davison on the Sunday night, and he was still a bit jaded from the crash and still a bit groggy because it was a big impact. And he said, if I'd have known at that point by crashing I'd have actually denied our team a race win, I probably would have gone across the top of the mountain that quickly. But find me a racing driver who on lap 152 doesn't go across the top of the mountain quickly, and I'll find you a loser.
Yeah, exactly. What was the crowd and the atmosphere like there?
Yeah, great. It was the second biggest Saturday crowd. We've had since Peter Brock's Memorial year. I think it was 180-something thousand. Either way, it was a bigger crowd than the previous year by not a significant margin, but either way, some of the events we've been to during the course of this year, the crowds have been down between 10 and 15%. Not at the marquee events, but at Queensland Raceway and Winton, respectively, I recall the crowd seemed a little bit less than they'd expected. So the diehards are there, and effectively you don't get a massive swell-in crowd on a Sunday up there. The people who were there on Saturday pretty much always there on Sunday, but there was a 3,000 person increase between Saturday and Sunday, so that just showed that the people who need a fine, sustainable, bright sunny day to leave Sydney on a Sunday morning at the crack of dawn to get to the race still turned up, and 3,000 extra people who paid money to actually watch the show, and hopefully 3,000 extra people who are going to tell all their friends about it so we can have a bigger crowd in the future.
Okay, and where's the next race? What's next on the calendar?
You should know that. We're off to the Gold Coast for the Armour All Gold Coast 600, which is where we've got 18 international drivers joining our regular drivers in 200-300-kilometre races, and not just international drivers, but 1997 Formula One World Champion Jacques Villeneuve will be there, joining Paul Dumbrell in the Bottle Racing Falcon. We've got Dario Franchitti, the 3-time Indy 500 winner and twice winner of the Indy World Series. Scott Dixon, who's also a winner of that. We've got so many big names coming back to Australia for what is an internationally themed open wheeler event in days gone by. The difference this year is all the stars and all the cars will be running in V8 Supercar races. Which
on paper sounds like it's going to be another great day.
Yeah, well, it's probably likely to shape the championship in the negatives for some people, because some of these internationals will all want to potentially beat each other. But until we go racing next week, it's hard to know who's going to have a good run and who's going to have a bad run. So, but yeah, 18 international drivers, World Touring Car Champions, World Sports Car Champions, Le Mans winners, Formula One World Champions, all coming to the Gold Coast, and an event that's effectively school is week for adults.
Okay, well, mate, good luck with your hard job, and we hope to speak to you soon again about some of the results.
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, happy to have a chat.
Thanks for your time, mate. I do appreciate you taking the time out of your lunch there.
Good on you.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Chris.
Bye.
That was Chris Jewell. He is the V8 Supercar caller. He works over there with Big Pond. Got a job that I'm sure we'd all love to have. After this, we're going to have the grand champion himself, Craig Lowndes. So stick around. There's that to come.